Rider Calyrex VMAX deck, Gustavo and his Victini VMAX deck. So let's head on over to the game then and see which of these players is going to be victorious. Remembering, of course, we are in the losers bracket here, so the loser of this game is unfortunately going to be the first player eliminated with an 0-2 record.
That's right, and I think for Gustavo, he's going to have a few priorities here. If he can get to go first, that could be one big advantage for him. Possibly Victini VMAX with that max victory attack could take some easy boss's orders knockouts on some evolving V Pokemon before Zach could get his own VMAX into play. The Ice Rider Calyrex, of course, very dangerous, so Gustavo's going to have to try and use tempo to his advantage to be able to win a prize race in most situations here, I think.
Absolutely, and Gustavo has started with 3 basic Pokemon, and none of them are who you want to start with. We've got 2 Dedenne GX and an Eldegoss. They are support Pokemon. They are drawing Pokemon or recovering your supporters Pokemon. You really want to start with an Ice Rider Calyrex V or something along those lines. Galarian Moltres, good option. You don't, Victini in this particular deck, but you don't want to be starting with Dedenne, and you don't want to be starting with Eldegoss.
The good news is these couple of quick balls will really help him out. At the moment, the only information that he has is that there's a Sobble, and I imagine most of the time you're expecting Rapid Strike Urshifu to be the main Inteleon deck. So he is still going to go ahead and get that Victini. He also can refresh his hand with Dead Age Change here, get himself a fresh 6. He's already got a Darkness Energy in the discard pile for his Dire Flame Wings here. So the Moltres is going to get powered up. The Victini gets himself an energy as well. So all things considered, it's not the worst. Looking towards his next turn, though, things might get a little bit awkward because he has already Dead changed away one of his Dedenne GX. He does play 3 copies and a couple Crobats, so he's not out of options. But we'll see how he wants to navigate it as we pass over to Zach's first turn here.
Absolutely, and to be fair, you've got that Pokemon communication, you've got the Air Balloon, we could be seeing an early Victini VMAX. Zach, for his part, he's got the Sobble to start with, which is a pretty good starting Pokemon. You want some of them out on turn 1. I mean, Zach's deck's fairly straightforward in terms of the Pokemon. You've got Ice Rider Calyrex and you've got Inteleon, so Zach here just needs to get his basics. He's got a couple of quick balls in hand to start off with that phenomenal artwork of Ice Rider Calyrex V, one of my favourite arts I think we've ever seen in the game. I adore that card, and it seems like Zach's going to be bringing it out ready to evolve it up hopefully next turn. These VMAX decks, you want that turn 2 VMAX.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think Zach with the double quick ball can also safeguard himself around aggressive boss's orders from Gustavo. I wouldn't be too shocked if we just see Zach go for a second Calyrex V here with quick ball. You can quite easily throw away Leon. You now know that you are hitting for weakness on the opposing VMAX, so that's an easy discard. You can get a turn 1 attachment down. You can go for Path plus Marnie, which is always a disruptive option. At the same time, we could see quite easily a quick ball for another Sobble. It is a big part of your engine. We'll see how much Zach wants to push here realistically, but his hand is looking very solid, depending on which way he wants to play this.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options here. I mean, at this point, Gustavo's probably having that realization of, oh, I'm not sure how good Victini's going to be in this matchup. You really need to try and get a couple of cheeky KOs on Pokemon V. What you don't want to do, though, is get a KO on Ice Rider Calyrex V, only for a VMAX to then hit you the following turn. Melanie, of course, can get it rolling in 1 turn energy-wise, and then all of a sudden, you've kind of traded 2 prizes for free and not in your favour. So Gustavo, like you said, Joe, is going to have to change the game plan here. And online tournaments are weird. In-person tournaments, you do find out what people are playing. People talk, you have a quick look around the room. There's none of that in online tournaments. So this is probably the moment where Gustavo goes, oh, weakness is not working in my favour here.
Yeah, and Zach with a pretty rough Marnie. He does go ahead and attach his water energy to the active Sobble here. It basically commits him to having to Melanie next turn, but the keep calling just means that his Marnie, means that he can always get some Sobbles as backup Pokemon here, as otherwise he would, in theory, only have 1 available, although he did draw 1 from the Marnie. He wasn't to know that. So playing it that little bit safer does mean that he needs to try and construct a Melanie here, as Gustavo is going to go ahead and use his turn attachment very quickly to combine with the energy switch here to take an aggressive prize with his Galarian Moltres. Not really wanting to put any other Pokemon into play. The Path of the Peak is stopping the Crobats and the Dennes, so this is basically the only option he had this turn, but at least he's started to initiate a race, and he's not to know this, but Zach's hand is very poor right now.
There's not much going on. I mean, really, we got the boss's orders, Lysander there, but that doesn't do very much. I mean, to be fair, you're hitting for weakness here, so it's going to be 80 damage, which is not insignificant, but it is definitely not what Zach was looking for here.
And this is exactly what Gustavo needs if he is going to pounce in this game. He's going to pick up a stadium now as well, which is fantastic for him. Means he's going to have the option to actually draw a few more cards here and maybe press that advantage a little bit more. In his ideal scenario, he could even find Welder plus turn attachment and VMAX. That would be an incredible combination to sort of piece together. But it is on the table for him because right now, his Moltres is a little bit short of dealing with the Ice Rider in the active position.
Oh, we've got Welder. I mean, you've got the one energy there from the Viridian Forest, but it's not exactly what you were looking for there.
He has the combo. He can go for this. I think you just go for it.
Oh, even draws the VMAX, because VMAX, remember, is just one fire, one colorless, so can attach for turn here and actually go and get the KO, go up 3 prizes to nothing, and knock all of Zach's energy off the board. If Gustavo's going to win, this is how Gustavo's going to have to win, and you know what? It's not a great matchup, but this is a pretty gosh darn good start.
Yeah, opportunistic from Gustavo. Really just sees one turn of weakness from Zach and is trying to pounce. Even though this Victini VMAX has weakness, it does still force that Melanie from Zach. And let's see what he draws. Quick Ball is not helpful to him at all. His only basic Pokemon are Ice Riders and Sobbles. He literally only plays 8 basics, no other sort of helpful draw cards like Dedenne or Crobat, which Gustavo uses, and got himself out of a bad hand last turn. So Zach's going to be forced to just do another attach for turn here. It feels like you possibly can't even go to the active. Is the 80 damage doing a huge amount for you here?
Not enough
once again
for me.
Forces a and the stadium's not doing a huge amount either. You really want attachment for next turn as well. So
you're relying on Melanie again. I mean, once again, you're in a situation where if you're going to get a good attack, because Gustavo needs to do nothing this turn. Gustavo has got the KO on that active Ice Rider Calyrex. The one thing Victini does, it takes out Pokemon V. 220 damage to a Pokemon V. There's rare exceptions like Wailord that you won't be able to one-hit KO, but they're very few and far between. So now Gustavo's down to 1 prize remaining, and, you know, at this stage, like, boss's orders and he's already got, to be fair, the Galarian Moltres, so I don't think he can lose from here. And I think Zach realizes that.
Yeah, he's locked in now. Zach, the only option to use Gust here would be the Victini V that has more than a 1 retreat cost, but he knows that the writing's on the wall. He's too far behind at this stage. So Gustavo with a very surprising and fast victory. I think both of us had him touted to be, not the favorite here. If his deck works as it should be, he should be, massively favorite. But not really getting things done here. His, path to the peak engine is also slowing him down in this situation.
Absolutely. And we talk a lot like Crobat and Dedenne. It's one of those, we talk about it all the time. When you talk about the Pokemon trading card game, those cards come up a lot. But the fact of the matter is, that is the engine. We've seen time and time again, Gustavo did it in that game. You get yourself out with those cards. And if you're playing a deck like Path to the Peak, like Zach is, if you don't have access to those cards, we saw there was that turn where Zach had a Quick Ball. Could have, if he was playing those cards, get himself out of it. But with those options gone, unfortunately did not get anything rolling. So let's head on over into game 2 then, see if Zach can have a little bit of a better start. Because again, the weakness is in his favor. If Zach sets up, you've got to think he's a favorite to win this game. But you know what Victini VMAX does? It runs through Pokemon V super quickly. It forces you to get set up very quickly, and if you don't, then we have a repeat of what we just saw in game 1.
Yeah, Gustavo didn't even have necessarily any difficult decisions at all, to be honest. He ripped a stadium off the top to allow him to draw 6 additional cards and really had everything from that Crobat and really got himself going. And Zach has a bit of a stinker of a hand here. Really is going to need some help off the top because he has not a lot going for him.
No, not at all. There's no Ice Rider V. There's no energy to attach. Just passing with a Sobble in the active. That is not ideal. Does Gustavo have anything that can KO a Sobble turn 1?
Well, there's a Welder, there's a way. You can go ahead and go for Victini turn 1. And,
Victini would do it.
The 2 fire energy. Yeah. So you can Quick Ball away just these 2 energy cards. You can go for Victini plus Dedenne change. And that could be an easy path for you. You can even do it with the Moltres. You need to have one fire, one turn attachment, and then one Dire Flame Wings. They're both on the table here. So I feel like you're basically always going for the Victini first. The upside of the Moltres is that you're allowed to find 2 different colors of energy. But I think when you already have Viridian established, the Victini V is the safest route here. So all we're looking for is a Welder. We already have the energy established, and then a switch card. That's all we need here to see a very rapid knockout to just run Zach out of valid Pokemon and take another steal of a win here.
It's not going to take much. We've got an energy switch, escape rope. There's nothing that's going to do it, unfortunately, there. Incidentally, you know, there are a couple of Victini V. There was a new one that came out with the VMAX, but it's the one from Sword and Shield. That is the best one. It's got the better attacks. You have those options for those cheeky early game KOs or punishing your opponent for attaching lots of energy. Didn't work out here, but the thing is, this is like going first for Gustavo, because he's going to be able to get a Victini VMAX on the board before Zach has evolved his Pokemon V, and that is what Victini dreams of.
Yeah, and he can even combine it with Escape Rope if he's able to keep his hand. Now, Zach does have a Marnie, so he can get himself a fresh few cards here. He also has Drizzle, so he can at least establish one Quick Ball here. So a huge sigh of relief for Zach as he has managed to have a second turn here and stays in the tournament. I feel like you basically always go for Quick Ball here, establish your Ice Rider, and just go for Marnie straight after. There's also good arguments to not use Viridian first, because you always like to fuel your discard pile with water energy in those opening stages to improve your Melanie outs.
Absolutely. Melanie's a very good card, you know, and Zach really wanted to come into this turn having that VMAX kind of established, ready to go. That would be starting to pick up KOs. I mean, it would KO the Dedenne straight away. That Victini V Max would not be able to hit the board, but we're seeing a repeat of what we saw in Game 1, with Zach not getting his board established well enough. You know, we're talking about Victini can't come down because of the weakness, but actually, Victini's an extremely efficient attacker, one of the most efficient attackers we've got in the game, if you're facing down the right Pokemon. So, like you say, Quick Ball for the Ice Rider Calyrex V, hope it's still there at the beginning of next turn so you can start getting this VMAX established. Once the VMAX is out, Gustavo's going to struggle to KO it while it's running through all of his Pokemon, but at the moment, that's a big if.
Yeah, we are going to see Zach actually does opt to still go for the water energy first. Of course, he is still looking to get a second Ice Rider, ideally down, or even more Sobble. And he actually is able to do both of those things and hold on to an Evo Incense for next turn. It means that he's like pretty much all in on a Drizzile the following turn, but it seems like you have no other option here. You just discard one of your Ice Riders, bench, and then also go ahead and grab another Sobble. That's pretty much your only line that you can do with this hand.
Yeah.
You could also get rid of the water energy because you know that Viridian stays in play. That's also a decent shout. It keeps Communication live, although he doesn't actually play Communication. He only plays Incenses and Level Ball here.
Yeah, and I like the idea of Sobble just in case an escape rope does come down. Now, we know Gustavo's actually lost both his escape rope that he had in his hand a moment ago, but Zach doesn't know this. So now if Gustavo does try and force an Ice Rider Calyrex V into the active, Zach can at least block it with that Sobble, which it's not ideal, but it's about the best he can do right now. Gustavo, however, there's a Victini V Max coming.
Yeah, he has the option to just remain as a V, actually, and turn attach to his V, and just do the 90 requisite damage that way. That means you're not giving up the 3 prize Pokemon. You could Communication into a Moltres and start using Dire Flame Wings if you really wanted to. I think the VMAX isn't the best choice here. It's just too risky a lot of the time. You're basically just feeding extra prizes to Zach at this stage.
And the thing is, we know Viridian Forest is on the field, and we know there's an energy on the Calyrex on the bench, so we know all Zach needs is the VMAX. We're not looking for a lot of puzzle pieces. You don't need Melanie and all of that. It's literally just the VMAX. So I think you're right. At this stage, Gustavo looking at the board is going to have to go, well, I don't think, if I put this VMAX down, I don't think it's going to last. And we do see the VMAX going back into the deck, and we do see the turn attachment. Yes, we do.
Possibly just debating because he still has the Viridian open, whether or not he needed to commit to this attachment. But I think he has got himself still not the best of hands realistically. Still supporterless for next turn. But I think you always have to commit one of these search cards to a Moltres and start beginning to get some attachments rolling.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
The Moltres isn't really an ideal attacker in its own right, but it's pretty much the best he has. It self-accelerates, which means he doesn't really need much else to get it rolling. He's already got Darkness in his discard pile, thankfully from some earlier discards with Dedenne. So he can just come in, deal the 90 with his Victini V, and try and make Zach's prize map that little bit more awkward, although there's plenty of good targets for Zach to deal with because all three Dedenne have been committed to the board at this point.
Yeah, that's going to be taking a lot of 2-prize knockouts. I mean, you look at Galarian Moltres, and on the one hand, it does 190 damage, whereas really 220 is a magic number for KOing Pokemon V. It's why Victini V Max is so good. But then you look at it again, and you're like, well, hang on a second. If it did 220, it would be far too good. So really does seem like the card designers were like, yeah, we've got to limit it to 190. Also, Marshadow taking the Viridian off the board here, like we said, is really big. Now Zach needs an energy, and he needs an Ice Rider Calyrex V Max, and he's only got 2 cards in hand, and we actually know it's not a great hand.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a real good sort of soul read from Gustavo, seeing Zach's position right now. And I think Gustavo was always forced to use Crobat here to refresh his hand. He's just too vulnerable to a Path to the Peak coming down, so he's going to take value while he can, knowing that Zach is playing a few Path to the Peaks at least. He's pretty much giving up the Stadium War at this point and saying, you know what, I've used my Dedennes, I've used my Crobat at this point, so even if Path comes down, I'm not really fussed by it at that stage. It's only really the Moltres that's getting shut off that could cause a bit of issue here.
Yeah, I do think that's absolutely fair. I mean, it's, you know, you look at Gustavo's board, it's... that was a nice pickup, because now you've got the Evolution Incense to go and get the VMAX or Drizzle as you wish. You've got a spare Ice Rider Calyrex V if you want it, although you probably don't, to be honest. And then you've got the Professor's Research to draw a new hand of 7. This is very, very different. That one top deck has made a huge difference.
Yeah, and you absolutely go for the VMAX here because you also have so many level ball outs to find your next Drizzle from this side of the research, and it's just that bit more flexible because you can see what your 7 cards are, then react appropriately to it. I think you can see Zach just tossing up where his prizes are going to be coming from here. The research is almost certainly getting played. Even if he doesn't find any energy, he could go ahead and Drizzle for Capacious Bucket as well, so should always be getting an attack off here. Ride the High King, quite easily getting himself there, and it's exactly that situation where he's going to have to commit to a Capacious Bucket by the looks of things, and can also put a Path to the Peak down. It does slow down the Moltres, and Gustavo has gone through a couple of Viridian and his Marshadow already, so this could end up being a really big stadium here.
Yeah, I'm really liking Zach's position here. The Path to the Peak, like you say, stopping Moltres is going to be big. And there is nothing in Gustavo's deck that can deal properly with an Ice Rider Calyrex V Max. It's kind of a 2-hit KO, but it's a 2-hit KO with Pokemon that are being 1-hit KO'd by Ice Rider Calyrex V Max. So I think this is the point in the game where Zach starts feeling really, really confident. Doesn't even need to discard the energy with a bigger attack. It's just Rider the High King and potentially riding to victory.
Yeah, Gustavo just having a little look there of what his best option is, because Zach's basically put himself 2 turns away from winning, and Gustavo looks like he might just be conceding here. Yeah, he knows that the clock was just on him. With that Path to the Peak established, even the Moltres can't establish a 2-hit KO into that VMAX, and it means that Zach simply can announce 2 attacks to get over the line quite easily there. Every one of Gustavo's Pokemon are just too fragile. That 250 damage that can be represented by the Max Lance is just too much here when even his VMAXs are getting 1-hit KO'd.
Yeah, Zach needed potentially 1 energy over the next 2 turns to wrap up the game. It was just looking too gosh darned easy, and Gustavo knew it. Gustavo's been around for a while, won a lot of games. Unfortunately, we've all lost a lot of games, and that was just one of those where the writing was on the wall, and sometimes you look at the board and you're like, you know what, this just isn't going to work. There is no way out here. Gustavo knows it's a bad matchup, but the good news is, did win game 1. We've got a game 3 to decide the winner, so let's head on over to game 3 and take a look. And I really do think we've seen from both players a route to victory. Gustavo is going to want to have the faster start and start taking some early prizes. For Zach, it is all about getting the VMAX established. And you've got to think, if Zach can get a VMAX with the energy on, that is probably going to put him as a pretty prohibitive favourite at this stage to actually go ahead and take this match.
Yeah, and Zach's finally got a workable hand. I think this is one of the best he's had so far. Still has no energies in it, but that's pretty much the best he's had up to this game. But Gustavo, he is going first, so he can try and take those opportunistic prizes just like he did in the first game, which he was able to win. And he doesn't have a bad start either, to be honest. A couple quick balls can get him rolling quite nicely here.
No, this is quite nice. I like where he is here. I like he's got the Victini, the energy. There's that Zapdos, which can be a decent attacker. You know, it's not ideal, but at least it's not weak to water. So, yeah, Gustavo, and going first is huge. Although you got to be thinking at this stage, at game 2, Gustavo had a chance to potentially get that super early kind of cheeky win and just take the match. Didn't work out at the time, and if he does end up losing this third and final game, that is going to be something that's playing on his mind, I think. And we see that Galarian Moltres is going to come in to play very early because it's a decent attacker.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, it at least forces discards from Max Lance, whereas sometimes Rider the High King is just good enough damage into Victini, and you really do need to force Zach to be using cards like Melanie, because it means he's not using Boss's Orders, and he's not digging into his deck with things like Marnie, so you at least have to force the Melanie in this situation if Zach is going to take knockouts. As Gustavo develops his board quite nicely, he's also going to plant that Marshadow for a little bit of protection from Path of the Peak and get himself a fresh 6 here. He's certainly representing the VMAX for next turn. So there we go. He's going to try and put the clock on Zach here.
I like this. I like this a lot. He's already got everything in hand to get the KO and go up by 2 prizes. So good news for Zach. He's got himself a capacious bucket. That is going to get the energy. And now Gustavo's got a bit of a decision. Does he want to go and get those easy couple of prizes? Or is he worried about Zach's next turn? I mean, just putting the energy on the active isn't going to be enough. That active is going to go down. What Zach really wants to do is potentially get energy on one on the bench or have a Melanie ready for next turn. Something to make sure he can respond. If Gustavo is allowed to get this Victini VMAX unchecked, we're going to see a pretty quick victory. And Zach knows that active is far too vulnerable at this stage. So it's not really thinking about, can that active be a VMAX with 2 energy next turn? It is about, can I make sure there is a VMAX, knowing that Gustavo, if he wants to, is going to be taking a prize or taking a KO for 2 prizes.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a call my bluff situation from Zach. You say, yeah, go ahead, make your VMAX. I can take 3 prizes on that guy. That's going to be better for me in the long run in the race, especially because Zach can make it so difficult when he eventually does establish a VMAX here. So I think we could easily just see another discard of that Leon. It's been in all of his opening hands. Is just going to go ahead and get rid of a Waters to open up that Melanie option. And can go ahead, grab a second Ice Rider, and his hand, honestly, it's not doing much, but thanks to the virtue of this matchup, it's completely fine for him right now.
And I'm looking at that Melon and I'm thinking, well, hang on a second. We can actually get 1 energy onto each of the Ice Rider Calyrex V here, which is the ideal situation, because now there's nothing Gustavo can do to stop Zach just needing a VMAX and an energy. And this now makes it super awkward for Gustavo to try using the VMAX next turn. And I am loving this turn from Zach. I don't think this could really be much better. 2 Ice Rider Calyrex, both with an energy on, 2 Sobble, ready to be Drizzile next turn to go and search out those trainer cards, and a Path to the Peak as well to slow down Gustavo. I think Zach has done a phenomenal job turn 1, really setting his board up to kind of make it almost irrelevant to what Gustavo does.
Yeah, that is a really robust board and hand. He's got Evo Incense and Drizzile for next turn, so he can be cherry picking no matter what he wants. But to be honest, he already has everything he needs, realistically. So Gustavo, he's going to be in a rough spot at this stage. He has been able to bounce the stadium with his Viridian Forest here. He can go ahead and use Pokemon Communication, but I think he's going to have to go for another drawing-based Pokemon. Looks like Dedenne GX is what he's eyeing up here because doesn't have many options in his hand otherwise. There's no reason to use Boss's Orders. There's 2 Ice Riders that are essentially the same in this situation. So he is going to go ahead and use this Viridian, just fit an additional card from his deck, and obviously the Dark Energy is a great one to throw away because he can use Dire Flame Wings this turn. He's going to manually attach to his active. He's going to take the prizes while they're here. You can't just sit around and wait for Zach's board to get even more dangerous. You have to take the prizes. And yeah, he's picked up a couple of nice stadium cards for next turn to always have answers to the path. There already is the Marshadow, of course. But he needs to make sure that his Dire Flame Wings are online for the remainder of the game if he is going to keep up with attacks here.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is 2 stadiums in hand, and like you say, that Marshadow on the bench means he's going to be able to keep getting rid of Path. But I think Gustavo did what he could. I think if you're Gustavo, because this matchup is unfolding in this way, you have to just put the Victini active, take the prizes, and cross your fingers. If Zach gets the KO, and we know at this stage Zach is going to be able to get the KO, we've got a Viridian Forest in play to go and get the energy, or Drizzle for Capacious Bucket. And it's probably going to start going really badly for Gustavo here, but I think you had to do that. Because if you don't do that, what are you going to do? Bring up, try and get a Moltres on board and not get a KO? Or use a Victini V and not get a KO and probably give up those prizes and the energy next turn? I think it was a get a KO and cross your fingers, and unfortunately we can see Zach's hand, and it is not going to work out in the way Gustavo was hoping.
Yeah, Zach has an embarrassment of riches. His hand is so good here. He can go ahead and grab the Capacious Bucket if he wants to. He can use another Drizzle as well to go ahead and grab a Research or a Marnie. He's already got the Reset Stamp in hand, so you can just fire that off and get an additional 7 here, knowing that you've already locked in that KO. Ride of the High King, thanks to weakness, will get the knockout here, so you can just retain those energies on your VMAX. He's pretty much good to go at this stage. And at the same time, he's building up those Drizzles to become Shady Dealing Inteleons, which actually double dip the same ability as the Drizzle that you're seeing right now. So it just allows him to have a lot more control as you get into the later stages of the game, where you can get some really nasty combinations pulled out all from one Pokemon.
Yeah, this is starting to look extremely good for Zach here. We've got another Drizzle coming down with the Evolution Incense, so that ability comes out again, lets you search for 1 card. Like you say, when you get into the Inteleon, it's double the ability. It lets you get 2 trainer cards of your choice. And it really is consistency here. You are trying to roll along with your Ice Rider Calyrex, you're trying to do that big damage. We see a Melanie coming down, so you're not even using your attachment for the turn, but you've still got your attachment for the turn. And we've got the Calyrex in hand. We've got an Evolution Incense to potentially get a second Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX next turn. And Gustavo's just not going to be able to take 2 of these down before Zach has taken his remaining prizes. It's, the one saving grace for Gustavo is Zach is actually going to be forced to take 7 prizes here. He's going to have to go through 2 Pokemon V after the VMAX. But I don't think that's going to be a particularly big deal, because I don't think, save a Victini with a ridiculous amount of energy, there's no way Gustavo's getting a one-hit KO here.
No, there's absolutely no way, unfortunately. And you could literally see Zach with his mouse. He was going back and forth saying, I bash, you bash, I bash, I win. So it's literally, at this point, the matchup is literally that favorable that Zach says, well, I've taken my prizes. Gustavo doesn't have enough turns to win here because he has to attack into this VMAX and not take a KO. Zach will always respond, and he has that prize card buffer now where he's never really phased, even if Gustavo maintains attackers throughout the remainder of the game.
Yeah, I think at this stage, as long as Zach can get another Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX next turn, that really should be everything that's needed to just completely sew up this game. And it's sad for Gustavo because we've got a phenomenal player, and I love Victini VMAX. It's one of my favorite VMAXs. It's a really fun card. But the fact of the matter is, when you get matchups like this, every deck has a bad matchup here and there. It just so happens that Gustavo's found a particularly bad matchup in round 1 of losers. Does get free energy on that Galarian Moltres, so is going to be able to use that attack to do lots of damage, but it's not enough damage, and we know it's just being KO'd right back.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much wrapped up for Zach. He can go ahead and go for Incense now, establish his next VMAX. He can put Air Balloon onto the active and then attach to his bench Ice Rider, and then that pretty much means that he can't lose from that situation from the cards that we know that Gustavo has access to. So I'm pretty sure it's just a matter of going through the motions now. Zach making sure he doesn't do anything, silly here, making sure that he doesn't play himself into a bad situation. He can just take things slowly here, but it's looking very comfortable for him in this race.
Yeah, there's not even a situation where Gustavo could try and use a boss's orders to keep an Inteleon stuck in the active. We see there's a scoop up net in Zach's hand, so not out of switching cards, not out of options to get out the active. 2 Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX, either of which are going to be able to finish out this game. And I really like the fact we got free energy on, because remember, to do the big attack on Ice Rider Calyrex, that max lance, you really want to discard 2 energy to do 250 damage. So with free energy on there, you discard 2, there's 1 left. Oh look, next turn I just need to attach the turn or Melanie and I'm good to go.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised we saw the retreat there. I think, you're not afraid of Gustavo taking 3 prize cards at all. And this means that it actually forces more out of Zach, because he has to find, in theory, Gustavo could put a 1 prizer into the active and make things a little bit more awkward. No, actually, that's not even true. So Zach is just going to attach and win, basically no matter what here.
It's, it is looking very, very favourable. And, Gustavo's there, it hasn't conceded yet, really trying to weigh up the options, trying to look. And unfortunately, Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX, it's not that super top tier deck. It's not quite on that level of Rapid Strike Urshifu or Shadow Rider Calyrex, where you're going to have to play it in a big tournament. But it's still a deck which is visible enough that Gustavo knew there was a decent chance. We actually know there are 2 in the tournament, Henry Brand playing it as well. And it's a bit of a calculated risk. You are hoping you don't run into it, and unfortunately, that's not the way it went.
Yeah, I think Gustavo was really... it's no surprise that Victini's not super popular right now. That Ice Rider is a big risk, and there isn't many easy tech cards that you can play in a deck like this. You'd think you'd have to add in additional basic energy or Aurora energy and have something like more Wild GX in your deck, which is getting pretty convoluted to try and make things work in that regard. But he's just trying to counter other archetypes. We didn't see any Lucario Melmetal. We didn't see any ADP variants in this tournament. There are plenty of Shadow Rider Calyrex, but Gustavo hasn't faced those matchups. So, yeah, it's just a rough time for him. He's pretty much teched out his deck to be a toolbox, and he's just not faced the matchups that he was looking for. As we see him going through the motions now, it does look like there's not much hope for him. I think he's digging towards Reset Stamp here to just not lose on board, essentially. I think that's really the only reason why we're seeing Gustavo going through these actions right now.
We might even be seeing a Victini v Max coming into play again. I mean, basically saying, look, you've only got 1 prize remaining, so it doesn't really matter if you take out a 1 prizer or a 3 prizer. The problem is, it's still not going to get a KO. Victini v Max is great against Pokemon V, but it's not great against Pokemon V Max. Now, they do count, so you'll still get the 220, but that's not enough. 220 is a great number for Pokemon V. For VMAXs, you're looking at 320 to 340. It's a very different thing, unfortunately, and you need to have another option for VMAXs. Now, against Shadow Rider, we've got the Galarian Moltres, that'll work quite nicely. Against your fighting weak Pokemon, you've got your, things like Eternatus, you've got your Galarian Zapdos. But like you say, it's a toolbox deck. It is picking particular Pokemon it can hit. And I've played a lot of toolbox decks. They're my favourite kind of decks to play. And the problem is, you will sometimes come up against a deck where you haven't got the tool you need to win. And the matchup kind of goes like this almost every time.
Yeah, Gustavo's missed his dream scenario. In theory, he could have found Boss's Orders plus Reset Stamp, and you bring up the 2 energy Shadow Rider. But not even the Reset Stamp for Gustavo. That was his last get out of jail free card. It's in the bottom 8 cards of his deck, unfortunately. We saw he was scouting for it. He went for Dead Change, he went for Crobat, he went for Research, but just not coming. So Zach can easily just drop the extra energy here, go for that Max Lance, and it's an easy KO. That is going to be the game. Gustavo actually had a route there with the Reset Stamp working in his favor, but Zach still had plenty of outs. I'm not even convinced that a Reset Stamp to 1 was good enough, because Zach needed so few cards to actually close that game regardless.
Yeah, there were just so many outs for Zach. I mean, you got to admire Gustavo playing right to the end. Unfortunately, the first player to bow out of the tournament with an 0-2 record. A very good deck. And it's one of those, you have these games, you have these tournaments. There is a bracket out there where all Gustavo did was play really strong matchups from start to finish, and Gustavo ends up going undefeated and winning the entire tournament. But unfortunately, when you're playing these hit and miss decks, which toolbox decks inevitably are, you end up with a situation where you don't hit the right matchups, and unfortunately, that's the end of his journey.
Yeah, it's a shame as well because his deck is sweet, if nothing else. I mean, he's really tried to bring something different to the table, surprise the metagame, and, you know, when you're coming up against 7 other amazing players, sometimes you need to make bold calls. In this instance, it hasn't worked out, but we've seen him make these types of calls in other big tournaments in the past, and it's really paid off for him. So you just chalk it down to just not being your day, unfortunately, but take nothing away. He still brought something brilliant to the table, showed us some great games, and, you know, even at the end there, he could have showcased a real sneaky way to get back into that game, but just wasn't to be, I'm afraid.
No, and there are times it is more fun to lose with an unexpected deck than win with the deck that everyone was expecting. Taking that chance can be an awful lot of fun. Now, there are 2 matchups we need to look at in the losers bracket. We've looked at one, so now we need to look at the last 2 world champions, if I'm remembering correctly. We've got Henry Brand and Robin Schultz. They're going to be playing in our next losers round bracket. We've already taken a look at Robin, so let's go and take a little look